Hello, this is Olio, and before I go any further, I wanted to share that this is short. That Olio is short for Olio podrida, which is Spanish for rotten bowl. I love that, and it's a Spanish Portuguese dish with pork, bacon, sausage, other things out of pork, as well as chicken, chickpeas, cabbage, carrots, beans, pig's ears, and also onions and garlic. In other words, olio is all sorts of things. So that's what's going on. My guest this time is Ginny Kesler
Day.
Ginny Kesler Day, and Ginny is deeply involved with the problems of plastic. And I think we all should be deeply involved with the problems of plastic. And if you want to know more, she's willing to get your information from Ginny Kesler Day at gmail.com, and Phil will have that at the bottom. And she has a website, studiesshow.org. Studiesshow.org. I haven't seen that, but I don't know if I really want to, but it's important. We must see that. First, okay, welcome. Thank you. And we have talked about plastic, but I would like to know how and why you got involved in dealing with plastic.
I was trying to think about how this really started in my life. I think almost everybody is aware of the plastic pollution that we're dealing with and the increase in plastic in the world, the physical increase in plastic. And our church, the church I belong to, is part of Placer People of Faith Together. And during the pandemic, when there was such an increase in the use of plastic, everybody felt that things would be safer if it was wrapped in plastic. And so the Placer People of Faith Together formed a plastics group just to kind of make ourselves aware of what was going on and what was going to happen to all this plastic that we were being presented with. Like, all the high schools were buying these little plastic dividers to put between the students when they came back to school. And what's going to happen to these millions of plastic dividers? So I got involved in that group just to kind of make myself more aware of what was happening. And as part of that, we took a tour of the dump, the Materials Recovery Center, to look at what happens to plastics that get thrown away. And that was really an eye-opener. And
why?
So, because most plastic, I would say 95% of plastic, doesn't get recycled, is probably not recyclable, and it goes to the landfill. And that's not a secret. Anybody can find that information out on even going to the Materials Recovery Center here in Placer County. It's fabulous. It's state of the art, but plastic has nowhere to go other than the landfill. So, yeah, that's one of those things that happen. And, I know with everything else going on in the world, maybe this doesn't seem like a big problem.
Oh, but it does.
Yeah,
hearing you, yes, and seeing all this other stuff, all this plastic everywhere, all over the place.
Right. But as I got involved in this, it was through that group that I heard about beyondplastics.org, and this is a nonprofit that was started by Judith Enck. She was a former EPA assistant director, and when she retired, she was under the Obama administration. When she retired, she tried to figure out what was the one environmental issue that she could really focus on that would make a difference. And she had decided back in 15 years ago or so that plastics were the biggest issue that she was very concerned about. And so I took an online class from her and that was just mostly dealing with public policy and how do we present this issue to our government people that are running things. But it was through her that I found out about the issue of plastics and health. And,
plastics and health.
yeah, I'm a registered dietitian, so I've always been interested in how our food, how it makes a difference in our health. And so I took a class from a college in Vermont from a professor who had a whole 6-week course on plastics and health and what happens when we eat all these microplastics and nanoplastics.
What do you mean?
So let me start out by just
I know plastics and what else?
Nanoplastics and microplastics. Yeah. The thing that people probably aren't always aware of is that I think for years
I'm not aware of it.
we always thought that plastic was inert, that it just was there. It didn't change. You know, that was kind of one of the selling
Here's
points
a
of
piece
plastic.
of plastic.
Yeah, and you know it doesn't go away. It gets put in the landfill. But the thing that I learned is that plastic is a petrochemical. It's this is my little diagram of it, but plastic is nothing but carbon chains with hydrogen attached. But the thing that gives plastic its properties, its flexibility, its color, all those different properties that we find in plastics are from the chemicals that are put in the plastic. And largely, they don't actually attach to the plastic molecule. They're kind of what we call adsorbed. They just are kind of in the molecule. Yeah. And the thing about that is that because they're not in there permanently, they seep out. They go
and if
into.
you touch them,
Yeah, right.
they get into
right.
your get into your mouth and get into your ears and get into your eyes.
And in our food and in the packaging, the single-use plastics that are food packaging are just filled with these chemicals. Researchers have identified over 16,000 chemicals that are put in plastic, and the majority of them are not really vetted by safety and health professionals.
And the people who are dealing with that apparently don't care.
Well, you know, I don't think it's really intentional. I think maybe a lot of the people that develop these develop them because plastic is useful and it's cheap, and that's what they are selling. And one of the things that people who are concerned about this will tell you is that when we have drugs that are being developed, they use the precautionary principle where the drug is vetted before, you know, for safety and efficacy before it's put on the market.
But that's
it's not true.
But that's not like plastic.
Right. These chemicals are put in the plastics and nothing is done about them until they actually are shown to cause harm. So we're being exposed to all these plastics, to these chemicals in the plastics all the time. I mean, it's ubiquitous. You can't get away from it. And it's not until something happens that that particular chemical is removed. It's like the BPA. Probably most people are aware now that BPA was removed from baby bottles. BPA is a substance that makes baby bottles soft and flexible, and it's used in all kinds of plastics. But when they realized that BPA was an endocrine disruptor, it affects the hormones in the body, and I think the tests that were done on that, it made it absolutely unequivocal that is an issue that could harm children. And so they removed the BPA, and everything that you buy now says BPA free. The only problem is they replaced it with BPS and BPF, and some of the studies are indicating that probably it's not any better. So, you know, my whole point is that people should be aware of what they're putting in their bodies, and they should be able to choose what they buy
Yeah.
and know that it's safe. And we don't know that at this point.
So if I go into the look at a piece of meat and it's covered with plastic, I shouldn't buy it.
You know, it's a choice, but you should be aware that there's a chance that the plastic has chemicals that are leaching into your meat. One of the interesting studies that I heard about, and this was kind of how people became more aware that the plastic was actually leaching these chemicals. There was a researcher in Switzerland by the name of Jane Monk who was doing graduate work with zebrafish, and she had them in polycarbonate fish tanks. Polycarbonate is a type of plastic. And what was happening was that the polycarbonate was leaching out a chemical that was similar to estrogen. And her fish were developing symptoms of being exposed to estrogen. Well, it was a chemical in the polycarbonate that was a mimicker of estrogen. And other studies have found that kind of thing too. There was a researcher in the United States, a physician, who was studying breast cancer tissue. And she had test tubes that she would put the breast cancer cells in. And it was the kind of thing where if they were exposed to estrogen, they would grow. If estrogen was removed, they would stop growing. Well, she got a new type of test tube from Corning, put the cells in the new test tubes, and all of a sudden they started proliferating like they were being exposed to estrogen, but there was no estrogen in the solution they were putting in there. And come to find out, the test tubes were a new kind of plastic that were leaching an estrogen mimicking hormone into the test tubes. And this was a chemical that's used in all kinds of plastics to soften it. It's used in like detergent bottles to make them soft. It's used in water bottles to make them soft. It's used in
water bottles.
Yeah, different kinds of soft water bottles.
So in the water bottles.
Yeah.
It's dangerous.
Well, that's one reason why they are suggesting that you don't use those plastic water bottles, and you certainly don't reuse them, because the older plastic gets, the more it starts to degrade. The microplastics come off the bottle and get into the water. The microplastics and the nanoplastics, which are, I mean, you can hardly see them, but they're there. And the chemicals get leached out with the plastic. As the plastic degrades, the chemicals leach out even further.
Okay. So what I'm getting is, and I assume that this is what you are getting in this, is that plastic is dangerous. Plastic is dangerous.
Yeah.
So I have lots of little things to put it's not, but it's plastic that I stuff put in. I shouldn't.
Like food containers?
Yes, food containers.
Personally, I try to not have my food touch any plastic as much as I can possibly do that. I even got rid of my mother's Tupperware. That's how concerned I am with this. I threw it in the trash because I didn't want anybody else to get it either. So I've been reusing glass jars.
Glass jars. Yeah.
I buy those glass containers. There are some good metal containers, and they're expensive, but they last forever.
Yeah.
One of the things that you'll probably find with plastic, if you have plastic storage containers, eventually they get brittle. Well, what's the reason they get brittle is that the chemicals have leached out of them, the chemicals that were making them soft.
So they've got into my mouth.
Yeah, right, yeah. And these are chemicals that they know that they're endocrine disruptors. They interact with our hormones. They replace hormones where they shouldn't be replaced. They can be neurotoxins. They can
What's a neurotoxin?
Something that disrupts the nervous system, that interferes with the neurons in the nervous system. a neurotoxin, a good example is the chemical that's found in it's paraquat. It's found in weed killers, and it's the one that, I mean, there's a lot of concern about that.
Yeah.
And I think they've pretty much found that is one of the risk factors for Parkinson's disease. And the thing about all of these, the hormone disruptors, the neurotoxins, the cancer-causing chemicals, as the production of these chemicals for plastic has increased, so has the disease burden. The diseases that, like things like that are hormone-related problems. The cancer rate is increasing among younger people, and even though the death rate has gone down, it's because our medical community is so good at curing cancer, or at least controlling it. But the
cancer is
the rate is going up.
Terrible thing to have.
It is, and younger people are getting things like colon cancer, and there are probably a lot of other environmental issues that we're dealing with, but it's just very concerning that the rate of disease is going up in parallel with the rate of these chemical productions. And the petrochemical companies like BP, you go to their website, British Petroleum, they're as they can see the handwriting on the wall that
I hope so.
Yeah, but as the production of gasoline is going down because of more efficient cars, and so they have
more
in their more plastics. They absolutely, you can go to their website and see what their goal is for the future and how much they're going to be pushing plastic on us.
Okay, and now that gas is not being put into so many cars anymore. What happens? What is happening?
So the petroleum companies are pivoting to increase their production of plastic because plastic comes from, it's a petrochemical, and so they're making up for the lost revenue by increasing plastic production, and they're building new facilities even to produce more plastic, and they're really telling the consumer that we need all these plastics, which we really don't.
No, we don't.
Yeah.
Absolutely, we don't.
Yeah. So go to any website like British Petroleum's website, and you'll see what their plan is. It's not a secret, but people need to be informed that this is happening. And there's a good documentary called Merchants of Doubt. There was a book, and then they've just come out with a documentary, and it dealt with the tobacco industry and then later climate change and how the industry was able to convince people to keep smoking even after we had absolutely no doubt that cigarettes
you must keep smoking.
Yeah.
Oh,
so
that's
now
crazy.
The same PR company is being used to promote plastics.
Yeah.
So we're being sold kind of a bill of goods.
Yes, absolutely.
So people do need to be aware.
And you have told me about information about Netflix, Plastic Detox.
Mm-hmm. That's a new documentary that just came out that deals with some couples who had unexplained infertility, and the endocrinologist that was working with them helped them develop a diet that would reduce they mainly measured phthalates, which is one of the chemicals that's used in plastics a lot, but they were trying to decrease the burden of plastics in their lives, in their diets, and in their environment. And they were able to do it. And it wasn't that onerous. They were able to make some really significant changes that hopefully will help their future.
Mm-hmm.
And I won't spoil it by telling you how many of them got pregnant, but it did
Enough
sort of work.
them.
Yeah. So it was very interesting, and it was a very good documentary.
Oh, good.
So I think the other thing that I really that interests me as a dietitian is to help people figure out how to not eat plastic.
Yes.
If you can keep it out of your diet, That's probably a big thing.
What a good idea.
Let's not eat
Jesus.
plastic.
Yeah.
Number one would be getting rid of the plastic water bottles as much as possible.
Yes.
Number two would be plastic. If you want to decrease the migration of plastic into your food, and so plastic is lipophilic, it likes fat. So try to avoid anything that's fat that's in plastic. So for example, when you're buying oil, try to look for a glass bottle or a metal bottle of oil. You can certainly find olive oil in those containers,
Yeah.
But try to avoid the plastic. Plastic or the chemicals will leach over time. So anything that is going to be held on the shelf for a while, try to not buy that in
Okay.
plastic, because the longer it sits there, the more the chemicals will migrate. The chemicals in plastic like acid, so things like vinegar, ketchup, mustard, those sorts of things probably you should try not to get in plastic. Trying to buy ketchup in a glass bottle or a glass jar is
difficult.
Very difficult. The Pika website has a link to some recipes, and one of them is a crock pot ketchup recipe that is super easy to do, and you don't even need to can it. You make it and you put it in jars and put it in the refrigerator, and it's really good. So
Not plastic jars.
not plastic, no, glass jars. I reuse
Glass.
every glass jar
Yeah.
I bring into my house practically. So that's the acid, the fat, heat. Plastic disintegrates with heat, and the chemicals move faster in heat. So you never want to never want to microwave anything in plastic. Keep plastic out of your microwave. So let's see.
And we talked before, and you talked about drinks
Yeah,
in the
cans.
cans.
Yes.
What's the problem?
It turns out most cans are lined with plastic. The instructor in our class said, think about a can as a scaffolding for a plastic bag. And one of the students in our class actually tested that theory. He took a cola can and stuck it in muriatic acid and dissolved the can, and what was left was the plastic lining that still held the cola. And so the same thing is true. I mean, think about cans as being plastic bags for the most part.
The inside is plastic.
Yeah. So you don't want to buy anything with alcohol or acid, or you don't want to heat a can. Anything that would cause the plastic to leach the chemicals into the food. So
Right. And if you're drinking cola,
yeah, you buy it in a glass bottle.
Yes. Okay.
So,
Glass bottle.
and beer too.
Yes. Yes.
So,
Okay.
tastes better that way.
I've got plastic all over the place, and I haven't gotten rid of it yet.
Yeah.
But I'm going to.
Well, one of the things that there was an article in the American Medical Association journal looking at, because the medical community is becoming more aware of this.
I hope so.
There's so much plastic in medical equipment and that sort of thing, and they're looking at what they can do to lower that. But they looked at if there were any foods that would help your body get rid of some of these chemicals.
Mhm.
The main ones are the phthalates and the PFAS chemicals that are in food. And in this one study, they found that when people ate a diet that was high in vitamin B, the various B vitamins, it was high in vegetables and fruits, and lower in fat, and higher in fiber. A healthy diet, essentially.
Healthy diet.
Yeah.
Yeah.
That they were able to lower their amount of PFAS in their diet,
Mhm.
in their bodies. They
Mhm.
were able to do blood measurements of that. and in this particular, the documentary on plastic detox, they were measuring the phthalates. The phthalates are probably most of them actually are excreted right away, but the problem is it doesn't take very many chemicals to be hormone disruptors, and so even a little bit is a problem. So by following these healthy diets and decreasing your exposure to these plastics, you really can decrease the phthalate content in your body. And the PFAS has a longer half-life. It probably is in the body as long as 8 years. Mm-hmm. It's one of those forever chemicals. But by eating the healthy diet with lots of fruits and vegetables and fibers,
and keeping away from plastic.
Yeah, not increasing the burden of plastic as much as possible. Yeah.
Okay.
So there are things that can be done, and there's more and more awareness of this. So hopefully, people will at least be able to have a choice, and will be able to make the choice themselves about whether or not they want to be exposed to this stuff.
Yeah. Okay. I insist that you get away from plastic, and when you go into the store, you'll see plastic all over the place, and it's unnerving. But there's stuff you can do. Well, Ginny, thank you very much for coming, and it's fascinating, horrifying, mm-hmm. but necessary. I want to hear this. Mm-hmm. I want to share this. So, Ginny Kesler Day, studiesshow.org, and Ginny Kesler Day at Gmail. Thank you very much for coming.
Thank you for giving me this opportunity. I appreciate it.
Good. I'm glad. Mm-hmm. And thank you. I'll see you later. Oh.